Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, Ya. As always, we hope you enjoyed the last episode because, as always, today's going to be an even better episode. I got the whole crew with me. Everybody's in the house today. And today, we're going to be discussing everything that we've learned so far in these playoffs. So we'll go round by round, not series by series, and discuss what we've learned so far. But before we jump into that, temperature check, how's everybody doing? Your mic's muted. It's a great way to start. We hear you now, though.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah.
Nah, I was saying, man, the NBA playoffs, you know it's lit, man. We get into it every single series. But I can't lie. There is a couple series where I have snoozed. Miami and the Bucks series, even though I am a Miami fan. I mean, like that's probably the worst quality of basketball out of every series. Other than that, the Kings and Warriors have been one of the best, and other series they've been good as well. So we'll definitely get into that.
So far, it's been good. Like I'd be said, there's a couple snooze fests to me, the Sixers and Nets. It was very hard to watch that series, very very boring series. And you go back to the West, Nuggets Wolves, a little boring series, but Jamal Murray been going at it. Lakers, my Lakers been doing fantastic, and I think the best series so far is the Kings and Kings Warriors. So we'll get into that as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think we all agree that Warriors Kings is the best series so far. Snooze first for me would have to be Denver and Minnesota. I haven't been able to catch any minutes from that series. Not a lot, but watch the highlights. Just can't really get into that type of series. But of course, today we're going to be going to a deep dive of what we learned so far in each and every series. Some series have been deemed over, but most of these series are in Game 3 going into Game 4. So we'll go ahead and start off with the Eastern Conference, the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks going up against the number 8 seed Miami Heat. The Miami Heat lead this series 2-1. Giannis has only played 9 minutes in this series, which is why the series is the way it is. So what have we learned so far?
I really believe Giannis's injury is a lot worse than we think it is. Just because one, Giannis is the type of player. We've seen him hyperextend his knee in the NBA Finals, and he played. I understand that's the NBA Finals, and maybe here they're thinking, we can say Giannis is still end up winning the series, but I doubt that. I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks approach it like that. I definitely do believe Giannis has a worse injury than they're letting off. It just doesn't make any sense because he was questionable for Game 3, didn't even play. Questionable for the last game, and it's just like what's questionable for the game before that, and it's just like okay, well, what's going on with Giannis? So I mean, so far in this series, I mean, Jimmy Butler has just been fantastic. Just the way he's been playing basketball. I mean, just absolutely asserting himself. We know Jimmy Butler when he comes into the playoffs, he's a playoff riser. But Middleton, he has looked good as well, especially in Game 1 when Giannis went out. Game 2 it was an absolute blowout. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks couldn't. To me, this series is just about role players hitting their threes because each game, the last 2 games, they've just been basically blowouts. Last game was Duncan Robinson came out, he hit some threes. Gabe Vincent hit some threes. Jimmy Butler was hooping. I mean, it's just a series of which role players can hit their threes and which team's gonna outshoot the other. Because Game 2, Milwaukee Bucks blew the Heat out by shooting better, and in this game, the Heat won because they shot better. And so I really think it's going to come down to who's going to outshoot the other in the series. And, it's been kind of an up and down series so far since Giannis went out. It is kind of entertaining. But, if Giannis were to come back at any point in the series, it would definitely shift in Milwaukee's favor. So.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis getting hurt the first 8 minutes of the Game 1. Him being out, I feel like, it is a big deciding factor. But even without Giannis, man, Miami Heat, the first, those 2 wins that they got, I feel like they've been the better team, bar the second game where Milwaukee just shot lights out. And we know what Jimmy Butler does, man. When it comes to playoff time, he's going to absolutely show up, and he's been doing that those 2 games. So, it's good to see Miami have the, role players show up. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, we haven't seen all year long. So, for him to come into that Game 3, hit 5 threes off the bench, or did he start? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, he started. He started.
Started. So 15 points from him. Kyle Lowry off the bench. Another, good game for him. Another 15 points from him. It's good to see Lowry come back in this playoffs. Actually, start hooping, start producing for the Heat. They need that type of player to come back. They paid him big bucks, so for him to play a couple good games is good. And Miami, on the other side, man, they lost one of their best players, Tyler Hero. So for them to miss him, one of their elite scorers, players. It's tough. It's tough. Obviously he's not a Giannis type player, but he's a big factor to Miami. But right now, if Giannis is still sitting down, still injured with this tailbone injury, I think Miami, they can scrape out this season. Not this season, but the series. They can come out with probably 4-2, 4-3. I just feel like Jimmy Butler is a much better player than Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. Although Chris Middleton been playing fantastic, but for me, these couple of last games, I haven't seen Brook Lopez been involved a lot lately. The full season, he's been a very big factor for the team, and I feel like Bam has been taking him out this series, and that's what's producing those 2 wins for them. So Miami up 2-1, man. If Giannis doesn't come back, I think Jimmy gets this one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like think you guys said it best. It's just the series is really just going to come down to which role players can shoot the ball better. For two teams that don't necessarily shoot the ball well at all. In game one, Miami shot the lights off from the 3-point line, which gave them the edge, even though Giannis only played 10 minutes. But some people would argue that the Miami Heat losing Tyler Hero is a much bigger loss than the Bucks losing Giannis. And I'm starting to see that because when you look at yesterday's game, of course the role players are going to play better at home, but what happens when they have to go on the road and perform? Like Jimmy Butler doesn't necessarily have that second scorer anymore. It used to be him and Hero, but with Hero, breaking his hand so early on in the series, these guys have to step up. Guys off the bench like Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Victor Oladipo no more after we just got word that he suffered a torn patella tendon. He'll be out for the rest of the season. But this series not necessarily entertaining as much. I feel like Giannis' injury is not as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. I feel like the Bucks are taking the more precautionary route. I feel like he can come back at any moment in this series, but I think they believe that they have the good enough roster to just beat this Miami Heat team. It might take the full length, the 6-7 games, but even then, I feel like they're just keeping Giannis in the back pocket just in case for whenever he's like fully ready to go. But I don't necessarily think he's 100% right now, but I think the Bucks want to get him as close as possible to 100% before they put him out there. Jimmy Butler did sustain an injury coming out of that last game 3 win, diagnosed with the glute injury, bruised glute. So I think, he's going to be questionable going into game 4. But it's going to be interesting to see, if Giannis is not able to go for the rest of the series, if Miami's able to, come out of the series with the win, in game 7 or game 6 to see when they close it out. But overall, I think Giannis is still, the Swiss Army knife waiting in the back. And then I think the Bucks will unleash him whenever they feel like their season is at risk. But enough of that series. We'll go ahead and move on to a more interesting series. We have the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers, a 4 and 5 seed. The New York Knicks are up in this series 2-1. They were able to escape Cleveland with the 1-1 draw. What have you learned so far from this series?
Man, just the physicality from New York is crazy. Like they're coming in to the Cleveland Cavaliers and they're telling them we're not afraid of you. And like this Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle. I understand Julius Randle, he hasn't been playing great in terms of his shooting. But just the overall assertiveness of that front court against the Cleveland Cavaliers is just it's been ridiculous, off the charts. I feel like they've just been physically taking it to them. Mitchell Robinson has been causing hell on the offensive glass. You have guys like Josh Hart getting in there for rebounding. You have Quentin Grimes. You have RJ Barrett. A bunch of these guys are just playing extremely physical. And, to me, the only guy that's showing some sort of poise, some sort of just consistency in the series is Donovan Mitchell for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's the only guy that's just decided, I've been here before in the playoffs. I've been here since 2018, since my rookie season. And, I'm built to play in the playoffs. But these other guys, Darius Garland, he had a great game too. Shot the lights out, played amazing. And then, but game 1, he wasn't there. And then game 3 was the same result. He shot literally the date. He shot 4 for 21, which is crazy to me. And then Evan Mobley, his just offensive game is just evaporated. I know he doesn't have a deep bag, but in terms of just being able to score, it hasn't been there for them. And so that, on top of that, you add in the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers bench players have just been practically unplayable. Guys have been just inconsistent in Isaac Okoro and LeVert, and then Cedi Osman and Ricky Rubio. I mean, where are they getting production from outside of Donovan Mitchell consistently? So I'm just looking at this series like Jalen Brunson, he's been phenomenal in this series. Just playing amazing. RJ Barrett showed up in the last game in game 3, which they really needed. And then they're getting contributions from everybody across the board. And then the only person who I feel like really needs to up his play is Julius Randle offensively. He hasn't been there in terms of his scoring. I think he's settling a little bit too much for my liking. He made punishing out of players this season, just taking it to them. And so he has the strength advantage on Evan Mobley, but Evan Mobley's an excellent defender. But I feel like the Cavs are just a little bit shook. They don't have that poise. They don't have any confidence to them, which is really scary to me if I'm a Cavs fan. So
Jalen Brunson and them boys, man, they came in and they're punching the Cavs in the mouth. They're up 2-1 right now, and it's been a very, very defensive, very, very physical series. And I feel like Jarrett Allen and Mobley and those guys down in the paint, they're not playing with the same physicality as the Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle. Although Julius Randle, he's shooting pretty bad from the field. Those last 3 games, I think 3 for 15, 8 for 20, 7 for 20. Yeah, his field goal percentage has been horrible, but at the other end of the ball and rebounding wise, him and Mitchell obviously been playing physical. Plus Josh Hart, plus guys like off the bench, Obi Toppin's coming in, Quentin Grimes, what's his face, Emmanuel Quickly. They got some people, but for me, the Cavs, man, it just goes to them. They got one guy on the offensive side of the ball named Donovan Mitchell that can get a bucket whenever he wants, that can score whenever he wants. But the inconsistency from guys from the bench, Isaiah Okoro not hitting his threes, Ricky Rubio playing bad, Cedi Osman not getting into rhythm, even Darius Garland just having one fantastic game, but the other 2 games he's been playing horrible. So for them to not get offensively into rhythm and only have Donovan Mitchell going, it kind of looks a little different from what they looked like in the season. Mobley was helping offensively. Jared Allen was there a little bit consistently on the offensive side of the ball, but you're not getting much from those two, and it shows. 2 games out of the 3 that they lost, they scored under 100 points. So to me, it's like you got to get some points on the board. You got to play some more physicality. They're losing the rebound battles, but to me, Jalen Brunson has been one of the best players on the court, bar Donovan Mitchell. This guy has been showing up every single game, and he's been hooping. So it's good to see that, and if they can get an ounce from Julius Randle on the offensive side of the ball, who knows what can happen with this series? It could be 4-1, 4-2, and it can end quickly. But Randle got to show up. That's all I got to say. He got to perform better, but guys on the Cavs, man, offensively, they got to tune up and help Donovan Mitchell. It's not going to be a one-man show this whole series. I thought this series was going to go 7. I thought it was going to go Cavs, but looking at it right now, it might be ended in 4-6, 4 or 5. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, the one thing I've learned for sure in this series is the fact that something that I've already known throughout the entire season. It's just the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers don't necessarily have depth. They don't have their lack of wings, of course, that we've highlighted since the beginning of the season, since they've traded for a guy like Donovan Mitchell, and they don't necessarily have any bucket getters. Caris LeVert, we've talked about him being in a 6-man role. I believe they inserted him back into the starting lineup now to run with guys like Garland and Mitchell. It's just not this team is just like it's just not a good fit. Obviously, I feel like they're just kind of putting it all together. The fit between Garland and Mitchell is great. It's not a problem, but they don't necessarily play any defense in that aspect of the game. And then, it's hard to get contributions from any other guy outside of Donovan Mitchell and Garland. And if Garland doesn't have it going, it's going to be an extremely long night because there's nobody else on the team outside of Donovan Mitchell that can get a bucket besides Garland. And it's just going to be tough, which is the reason why I picked the Knicks to win this series in the first place. If these guys end up leaving New York, going up 3-1 back to Cleveland, I think they probably lose that game in Cleveland, probably just come back to New York and end it there. But it all starts with their leader, Jalen Brunson, man. I've said it a couple episodes ago. I feel like this guy's the best player on this team. Even though Julius Randle has been playing like an All NBA player this entire season, I think they only go as far as Jalen Brunson goes, and he's been phenomenal this series. He hasn't been able to match Donovan Mitchell's production out there on the floor, but he's able to keep this ship afloat. And Julius Randle, he's been playing terrible, but at the end of the day, at least he's showing a little bit of effort. He's bringing the physicality to the game and stuff like that. And the New York Knicks depth, guys like Josh Hart coming off the bench quickly was kind of terrible the first couple of games, but he kind of stepped it up. Obi Toppin's coming off, Isaiah Hartenstein. And the one guy that I do want to highlight is RJ Barrett. He's just really, he's starting to understand that, he's got to let his game come to him. He can't necessarily rush anything. The first 2 games, he wasn't necessarily the greatest at all, but they're able to escape Cleveland 1-1. And then in game 3, we saw him hit a couple shots early on, and then he started to get his confidence going. And then he ended up having a good game. And then they asked him post game, when did you feel like you got your shot back? He said, what's today? Today is Friday, and he said I got it back on Wednesday. So, overall, I think this series is very, very entertaining. Garland has to be more consistent on the offensive end. He has to be a help for Donovan Mitchell. It's going to be rare when we get Karis LeVert 24 points in Game 2 type performances. So in order for the Cleveland Cavaliers to even have a chance in this series, coming out of New York, it all comes down to the backcourt. Donovan Mitchell's going to do his thing, but Darius Garland, what are you going to do? When your number is called. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the next series, and I believe the next series has already been wrapped up. The Philadelphia 76ers sweep the Brooklyn Nets 4-0. Coming out of this series, Joel Embiid suffered an injury. I think it was a right knee sprain. His status for the next series is 50-50. Before we start thinking about the next series, what have we learned so far from this series?
I mean, I think I want to say I had the Sixers winning this in about 5, if I recall. I mean, I just feel like one, the Nets didn't have a secondary score. They just have like a bunch of guys that are just shooters that are just all around. And then you have Michael Bridges, who separates himself as the best player on that team. But the last 3 games in that series, outside of Game 1, Michael Bridges really struggled shooting from the field. And it was like literally a combination of every possible scenario in this series. Game 1, you double Embiid. Well, Michael Bridges has this huge game. The Sixers shoot lights out. They win that. Game 2, the Sixers struggle first half shooting. You're still doubling Embiid. You get a Cam Johnson game. Well, Sixers still win that. Game 3, Embiid is having an awful game. Awful game. Same result. The Sixers role players in Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, they show up. Game 4, again, you have the lead. Things are going well. You're up to 11. Same exact thing happens again. Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris show up. D'Anthony Melton shows up. Paul Reed shows up. I mean, like if I was a Nets fan, I'd be really frustrated with how Jack Vaughn was guarding Joel Embiid. I understand it is the MVP, right? But what Doc Rivers and the Sixers are doing was placing Embiid at the top of the key and just telling them, okay, double from either side. Embiid is just gonna make the pass. It's not that hard. And what the Sixers are literally the number 1 shooting 3-point team in the entire league. So I don't know what kind of recipe you're cooking. I mean, you have Nick Claxton there, who I believe is a very good defensive player. You didn't trust him. Simple. That just tells me enough. And I felt like this team, it's really a star away from doing damage. They really need just that number 1 player. They have a lot of good pieces in play. I like what I saw from Cam Johnson and Michael Bridges. Even though Michael Bridges shot, I think that's what separates a number 1. I don't think Michael Bridges is built to be a number 1 player outside of Game 1. But outside of, and then another key thing about this series was James Harden's finishing. Well, if you look at his 3-point shooting and his mid-range shooting, I mean, he was shooting good on those sides. And then when you got to his finishing, I mean, everything was downright terrible. It just made no sense to me. I was confused watching him. He'd get to the basket and have no lift in terms of finishing. He would leave every floater short. I mean, I think he's shooting 7 for 27 in the paint this series, which isn't a good sign if you're going up against Boston in the next series. So that's something we have to definitely keep an eye out on. But Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, they played phenomenal this series. And Joel Embiid, we can only hope this 1 week of rest that they're probably going to get helps them out. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, this is the boring series, man. I had the Sixers winning in 4 for this one, and it was a lot about the role players for the Sixers. Jack Vaughn wanted to come out double team Embiid almost every time he touched the ball. Embiid wasn't in the paint much, and guys like Tobias Harris, guys like Maxey, guys like coming off the bench, Paul Reed, D'Anthony Melton, they showed up and they helped him perform. Even James Harden, bar that one bad game where he had 8 points and the one where he got kicked out, the one he got ejected, he was cooking, and we're gonna speak about that ejection. But the Sixers, they completely control the series. Even if some games they were down, they didn't worry. They get to the 4th quarter and they'll come out and prevail every single time. And that is on Brooklyn for not having a real star player. You have a lot of role players: Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie, Nick Claxton. Those guys are all role players. Those guys can be great pieces on a great playoff team with star players. But for them to just be meshing with each other and keeping this game close, I applaud them. They're just missing that 1-star player, Mikal Bridges, this series, man, his shot selection, his field goal percentage, his 3-point selection, and the field goal percentage there has been kind of, pretty down compared to what he was doing the last 27 games he got traded to the Nets. And it kind of came out this series. They played some physical defense on him. They forced him to make some tough shots, and he wasn't making those tough shots. But Yeah, it wasn't a lot to say about this series to me. I knew the Sixers were going to come out, but the Nets, if they can get a star and pair them with this type of role players that they have, they might be able to, cook some up in the playoffs. But that's the future. And B coming down with a knee injury and a knee strain, we'll see what happens, man. This guy's a big guy. He's a big center. Knee injuries are no joke, so we don't know how long he's going to be out. He does have about like 4 to 5, maybe a little bit more, rest this week. Depends on what Boston and Atlanta series goes to, but Philadelphia, they look good. They didn't score a lot of points. They didn't break the 100-point mark, but they play great defense. And hey, shout out to Jack Vaughn, man. He wanted to take and beat at the game, force other players to beat him, and that's what happened. So we'll see what happens in the series.
Yeah, I mean,
Series, I mean.
I think I had the Brooklyn Nets losing this series in 5. But I did say if the 76ers wanted to send a message to the Boston Celtics, to the Milwaukee Bucks, they had to get these guys out of here in 4. Don't play around. Just get these guys out the
What
playoffs.
did Doc Rivers say? Don't play around with your meat.
Don't play around with your meat. Oh man, that old head, man. It's just a crazy thing to say, but it is kind of true though. Don't play around with your food. That's exactly what the 76ers did. They didn't play around. They flipped these guys. And Jack Vaughn, I feel like coming out of Philly, after the first 2 games, he was just complaining, not necessarily making adjustments, but really relying heavily on the referees and the officials to make a call on for their team, in their favor. And I just feel like that's just not the case. That's not going to happen in the postseason. You can't necessarily complain and pray that everything goes your way. And obviously you're the underdog in this one. You're coming back to your home court, and all you gotta do is just win one. We'll try to win 1 or 2 and to extend the series as long as possible. But they weren't even able to do that. I feel like the 76ers did a good job. They had a great game plan, and obviously it wasn't necessarily forcing the ball between James Harden or Embiid for the first 3 games. It was kind of a collective effort. And then even without the big fella in game 4, I feel like, James Harden, even though he didn't have it going, I think he did a great enough job at getting guys the ball in the right spots. And as I was watching the end of that game, I saw Tobias Harris close out that game for them. He was hitting bucket shot after shot, bucket after bucket. He gave him enough separation for them to, come out with the sweep. But as we all know, we know Joel Embiid is needed for the rest of the playoffs, but it's a good sign for the Philadelphia 76ers that they're able to get these guys out of here in 4 games, and not necessarily have to prolong this series 5 and go from flight to flight and stuff like that. But one thing I do want to talk about is that game 3 where we had an ejection, and then we had a shot to the nuts from Joel Embiid to Nick Claxton. I think we had a couple ejections in that game. I think Nick Claxton got ejected as well. A little rowdy in that game, but coming out of that game 3, no suspension for James Harden, or not no suspension for James Harden, no suspension for Joel Embiid. I got a problem with that, man. I feel like we're gonna get to it in a little bit. Draymond Green in his actions over in game 2, with him having a short leash, I feel like everybody else in the league can do whatever they want.
Nah, I mean, like, I feel like it's an intent thing. Like, okay, if you watch the replay, Joel Embiid didn't necessarily kick him anywhere that was just brutal. It's like he tried to kick him and he basically just tripped him. Should he have gotten like a flagrant 2 for that? I don't know, but I definitely think the James Harden call was probably a makeup for it. Because there's no reason why James Harden should get a flagrant 2 for that. At worst, it's a flagrant 1. It makes no sense that they decided to toss him because he's just trying to create space. With Joel Embiid, I mean, I believe they both got hit with double techs. I mean, it's a play on type of thing. It's not Draymond where he just damn near just jumped on a guy, stomped him. It's just not even close. I don't know why people are creating some sort of equivalence between the two. I feel like Draymond, the intent was to literally just stomp on it. Embiid was just trying to create space, just get out of here. Why you step? Because he's literally stepping over him. And Draymond Green literally jumped on a guy, did a Mario jump on him, man. He stomped on his chest. Like, come on, man. Draymond was way worse. What?
Oh, yeah, to me, Embiid, it looked like he kicked him in the back of the hamstring. I don't think he even kicked him in the nuts, but
He didn't. He didn't.
he did it. Like, I mean, I don't know. You kind of got to look at it like
Flagrant 1, maybe. Yeah, sure.
Like flagrant 1, but the way Draymond did it, he was in a UFC battle. It was like the last, 15 seconds in the game, and he was like, I'm gonna stomp on this guy. And he did that with intention. And that's the thing that's different from me. Embiid, he's always flailing his legs. He's 300 pounds. When he gets to his landing, his legs are going up. So I don't think he did it intentionally, but he kicked him in the back of the hamstring. I feel like it guaranteed a flagrant 1. He got a technical on it, but the Harden one, it was just completely.
That's just whatever. Cool. If you want to call flagrant 1 at worst.
Like,
How's that ejection?
immediately ejecting Harden off that, yeah, to me, it was like makeup call for Embiid doing this and Claxton getting ejected as well for taunting. Now, I don't think he even taunted it. To me, the refs were completely out of that game. It completely, for me, was just horrible refs in that game. And I feel like they got to let the boys play, especially, Claxton. He was cooking Embiid for a little bit. He was talking his shit, but I guess the rest didn't want to hear that. So, the Harden ejection, the Claxton ejection, I feel like that was on the wrong side of the ball. Maybe Embiid should have got ejected. Who knows? He did kick the guy, but hey, keep it playing, man. You can't compare that to the Draymond situation. We see what
But
Draymond did.
we were talking about it having the intent, and then it's all about the intentions, right? And I feel like Joel Embiid wasn't just trying to like
But it
why
was
is this foot up
an
in the air? Like,
exaggeration. Like it's just different. Like cool. Like even if we say Joel Embiid meant to kick him, he didn't make contact to anywhere where it was just like extremely excessive. Cool. At worst, he kicked the back of his hamstring. Draymond literally stomped on a guy's chest. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
it is what it is. I listened to Draymond talk about it the other day. He's just like, I'm not the one to compare both situations, but to speak about Claxton and James Harden, I feel like James Harden. That's a normal move that he does on a year day-to-day basis, in the gym and in the game as well. So I just feel like you just obviously hit him in the nuts. It happens, right? So you kind of just have to give him a flagrant one, but I feel like a flagrant two is a little bit excessive. And then for Nick Claxton, that one it didn't make any sense because I just feel like it's just I think he dunked on MB at the time. He got a big bucket, kind of just flexed in his face, knowing that he has a technical foul already under him. It's just like, come on, ref. Like, you gotta let these guys play. Nobody's coming out here to watch these guys get tossed out. And for two guys to get tossed out in one game, it's just kind of crazy. We don't necessarily see ejections like that a lot, especially in the postseason. But for us to get two in one, it was just kind of ridiculous. But you know, overall, good series for the Philadelphia 76ers, man. They sent their message loud and clear to the rest of the Eastern Conference that they're one of those teams that can compete for a championship. So, of course, they'll be in the conference semifinals waiting for the winner of this next series that we'll talk about in the last series for the Eastern Conference. The Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks. The Boston Celtics are up 2-1 in this series. They were able to take care of business on home court by going up 2 in Boston. The Atlanta Hawks were able to, protect home court in Game 3, by winning Game 3, and so by winning at home. And then, so with that being said, what have we learned so far from this series?
I mean, to me, the biggest thing that I have noticed is I feel like Derek White has been the second best player for the Boston Celtics in this series. I mean, his pull-up jump shooting has just been off the charts, and then his defensively, I mean, he's just been a flat-out stud for this team. The first two games, it felt like Boston had control every single way, even when they made those little 11-point comebacks, and they're still only down by 10. It just felt like Boston had control of those first two games, like just Trae Young, those first two games, was really struggling to beat. And it's crazy because Miami and Boston are those two teams that he struggles against just because they employ a switch defense. They're not letting Trae Young try to get drop coverage and then he could just pick up apart with the floater. They do a great job in terms of just switching everything and not letting. And they have a lot of defenders on that Boston team, so he was really struggling to find a shot. But DeJounte Murray, he really stepped up, and both of them stepped up in game 3. I feel like they did a great job of just attacking. They're making some tough shots towards the end of the game. But I feel like even with that, Boston Celtics to me are comfortably going to still win this series. I have them winning this in now, I guess, 5. Originally, I had them sweeping this, but, Atlanta did a good job of protecting the Game 3 home court. But I feel like ultimately, you're not going to have a game where Bogdanovich comes off the bench for 15 and DeAndre Hunter is going to contribute and, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray combine for almost 40 plus. I just feel like that's not going to happen again with this Boston Celtics defense. They're going to lock in towards the end. I feel like they're letting Al Horford switch on to Trae Young a little bit too much for my liking. They weren't fighting over screens, but it's a little stuff that they can end up fixing. And Jaylen Brown, he has been a little bit quiet in this series. I expect him to have a big game in Game 4, and we'll definitely see that.
Yeah, the first two games of the series, Boston was definitely in control. They were creating havoc, especially Derek White, man. They were picking on Trae Young. They were sending a lot of down screens for Derek White, getting him open shots, letting him run off the ball. Fantastic first two games. I think he had 26 and 25. They were playing great defense on Trae Young, even DeJounte Murray as well. They were playing great defense on him. The bench was not, involved for Atlanta those first two games. And You know, it was a little different the third game. You know, they had a lot of scoring come off the bench the third game, especially from Bogdanovich. You know, a couple other guys were off the bench. Sadiq Bey, they were scoring. They're getting help. You know, Trae Young had a good third game. Murray had a great third game, and it showed. You know, they were lights out from the 3-point line. But to me, you know, big part of the series, the reason why Boston is going to win is going to be a lot of Derek White and the bench players, Robert Williams. They, you know, the production that they're getting from those guys is fantastic. Plus Tatum, you know, we know Tatum. He's going to come in, show out every single game, and he's going to produce. And that's what they've been doing, you know. Although Jaylen Brown's been quiet these last 3 games, he hasn't been really able to do much since a lot of other players have been, you know, stepping up in his position and been cooking. For me, this game is going to be big. You know, are they going to let Atlanta come out again like they did last game and let them drop almost 78 points in the first half again? We're going to see what happens, man. I feel like, you know, the key for Atlanta to come back and win some games is getting Trae Young open, letting him get to his spots, letting him get to his shots, and the help from the bench, especially guys, you know, like Sadiq Bey and Bogdanovich coming off the bench and performing. John Collins got to take a step up forward. You know, he got to start helping out as well. But I don't think that's going to happen. I feel like Boston's going to come out this game. They're going to play physical and they're going to win this game by a lot. So we'll see what Jaylen Brown does. You know, he's been a little casual on the side, but I do want to see him get a little 30 ball and start cooking up. You know, Derek White had a bad game last game as well, 4 for 7. He didn't get his shots. They played great defense on him. They kind of switched it up a little bit, but we'll see what happens this next game.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much this series has gone pretty much how I expected it to go. You know, I knew the Boston Celtics would cause a lot of trouble for Trae Young, because we saw it last year with the Miami Heat, and I feel like, you know, obviously the Boston Celtics have a way better defense, and it's good that they have DeJounte Murray to take a little bit of the load off Trae Young, and you know, DeJounte's been pretty solid this entire series. Hasn't necessarily shot the ball well in terms of, like, you know, field goal percentage and stuff like that, but he's been able to, you know, create some opportunities for himself and his teammates. And Jaylen Brown, the reason why he's struggling right now, I feel like, you know, that scratch, you know, to the hand from the broken vase is I feel like it's still bugging him. I know he had a big game one, but you know, these last couple of games, he hasn't really been, you know, turning up like the Jaylen Brown that we know him to be. But, you know, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, you know, they came up a little bit short in game 3. But this series is pretty much going how I expected it to go. You know, I knew that the Celtics were going to protect home court, come out of Boston 2-0. And then in one of these games, whether it was game 3 or game 4, the Atlanta Hawks were just going to get extremely hot and, you know, win one of these games. And for the Atlanta Hawks, they were able to take care of it in game 3. I feel like game 4 is going to be a lot more interesting because I feel like, you know, the Boston Celtics know if they take care of business right now in Atlanta, you know, they go back to Boston, they're not going to lose that game. And that series is going to be over 4-1. And then next thing you know, they're already preparing for the Philadelphia 76ers probably a little less than a week from today. So, you know, Trae Young, going back to game 3, you know, it was nice to see him and DeJounte kind of close out that game. This is pretty much what, you know, the Atlanta Hawks have been asking for, you know, since they've got this guy, and since that postseason run where they made the Eastern Conference Finals. They just kind of need this guy to have great games consistently in the postseason, not necessarily have any of these stinker performances, especially the games that he's been putting up in games 1 and 2. I feel like he did a hell of a job facilitating, hell of a job, you know, with the shot making, and then, you know, having, you know, DeJounte Murray, a guy that they traded all these picks for. It was a sight. It was good. It's good to see him, you know, come into the fold and kind of go bucket for bucket with him and Trae. So overall, this series is going how I expected it to go. Boston being up 2-1 still. Game 4 soon. I feel like, you know, Boston going to take care of business in game 4, and they're going to take care of business in game 5. But that pretty much wraps up the Eastern Conference Finals, the Eastern Conference playoffs so far. Now we move on to the Western Conference, which I believe is a little more interesting. But we'll start off with a boring series that might be a sweep. The Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Denver Nuggets are up 3-0 in this series. What have we learned so far?
That Karl Anthony Towns is terrible. 100%. I mean, like, Anthony Edwards has done a lot in the series. You know, game 1, you know, they got blown out. Cool, it happens. But these last 2 games, I mean, Anthony Edwards has been the best player in the series. On both sides of the floor. Regardless, I mean, this guy's been playing absolutely phenomenal. He's been playing lights out, the shot making, the rim pressure. The second half of the year, he's really figured out how to attack defenses. And then for Karl Anthony Towns, you know, the box score is going to show that he had 25 points last game. Don't be fooled, man. He did not have a good game at all last game. And defensively, he was just downright terrible. It was just, those numbers were not fooling me, man. This team, I feel like Karl Anthony Towns has to be the one that's traded. You know, Gobert, I'm not a huge fan of him, but at least with him, you know what you're getting with Rudy Gobert. There's a baseline of what you understand with Gobert. With Cat, you have high expectations for what he's able to do. And, in this series, he just hasn't been able to take advantage of an Eric Gordon power forward. He hasn't been able to take advantage of even Jeff Green and Aaron Gordon being on the court at the same time. And then Jokic his playmaking has just been phenomenal. And the blue arrow in Jamal Murray, he's shown up. Michael Porter Jr., he's shown up. I mean, to me, the Nuggets, I don't know why people thought this would be an intriguing series at all. This to me, the Nuggets were always going to dominate this series. Maybe if Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid were here, it would be a little bit more interesting. But ultimately, the Nuggets' offense is just too much for these guys to handle. And Anthony Edwards, he's done everything in his power to try to get them back in. Back-to-back games where he had monster performances. I seen one play where he literally just pinned a guy, took it all the way to the other end. I mean, that's just the type of plays that he's trying to make to get his team back up. But down 3-0, there's just no way they have any chance this season. All eyes have to go on Karl Anthony Towns and his performances. And, definitely in the offseason, they have to make some tough choices and get him out of there.
Yeah, to me, this series has just been how soft Towns has been, man. I've been said this guy's a soft player. He loves to sit at the 3-point line. He's not physical. He can't take advantage of smaller guys, and it's showing. You guys got guys like Green on him and Jeff Green on him, and guys like Bruce Bowen on him, and guys like what's the other player that's guarding him? Aaron Gordon and Christian Braun. It's like you have the smaller guys on you, and you're scared to take the physicality to the paint, post up, and even if he does, he still gets bullied out there. So to me, you guys you got your other teammate, your other superstar, Anthony Edwards, showing up and hooping every single game, bar the first game, and you're not producing anything, and you're getting paid those big bucks. It shows a lot. It shows a lot. He always talks about he's this type of guy. I'm this guy. I'm him. I'm one of the best centers in the league at all. He has not shown anything at all to be claiming he's one of the best centers in the league. And this playoff series and the playing game second half, it shows a lot of that, him not producing, him not playing up to expectations. And to say Gobert's the weak link of this team, we know what Gobert brings to the team. They don't ask for him offensively, they ask for him defensively, his defensive presence and what he does on the defensive side of the ball. But you have Towns that is not producing on either side of the ball, and he's not helping whatsoever. So to me, it's tough for the Minnesota Timberwolves to even get a game when your guy like that's not showing up whatsoever. But speaking about the Nuggets, man, they're just playing fantastic ball. They got all three of their big guys, MPJ, Jokic, Jamal Murray. They're all showing up. They're all playing fantastic. The team's playing good. The role players are showing up. KCP, guys like Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon. They're all producing. They're all coming in playing the roles. And you don't need Jokic to go for his 30, 15, and 15 to try to lead this team. That second game, fourth quarter, MPJ shows up 13 points. It helped him a lot. They blew a big lead. It was a very close game that second game, and he had 13 points in that fourth quarter. So for him to come in and do that, off a slow start, it was good. Jamal Murray dropping 42 points in that game. And then the third game, a full team outshone. Everybody showed up, everybody hooped it. That's what it is for the Nuggets. They really, they don't have to depend on a guy, one certain person to do everything for them. They got a collective of guys to do that. So yeah, this series it's over. It's been good to see Ant come back and hoop fantastic like this, man. But Towns got to go sooner or later. They got to, try to get some pieces for Towns and ship him off somewhere. Because ever since he came to this, or ever since he's been drafted to this team, they haven't really been doing much. So
I agree. I agree with both of you guys. I feel like with how great Anthony Edwards has been in this postseason as a whole, I feel like they have to do right by this guy. There's just no other way you could put it. I feel like, with Karl Anthony Towns playing so bad those first two games, I feel like if he played a little bit better, just an ounce better, he would have given him a better chance for them to steal a game in Denver. And it's crazy. Even when he had a 27-point game, they still lost by 9 at home. I feel like it's just like, he didn't really do much. He's not necessarily matching, the effort that that the Nuggets are putting out there, and it's a one-man army for Ant. He's going out there, he's hooping, he's getting buckets, but who else on the team can do that outside of him? It's supposed to be Karl Anthony Towns, and for him to just put up, these 10 and 11 games, first in games 1 and 2, he's not really helping his team out whatsoever. And I mean, it's not what I expected coming into this series. I thought, these guys would put up a little bit more of a fight. I thought this series was going to go the distance, maybe like 5 or 6, if I remember correctly. But the Nuggets looks like these guys are going to come into Minnesota and sweep these guys after game 4, or at worst, Timberwolves get one game and then they end up going back to Denver and end up closing it out over there. Nuggets have done a hell of a job, with their main guys, Jamal Murray, Jokic, and Michael Porter. Jamal Murray, though, I do want to speak about him being a playoff riser. I feel like, a lot of people don't necessarily look at him as one of these top point guards in this league, but whenever the postseason comes around, this guy's one of those top guys that steps up and shows up. He's not afraid of the moment. He's one of those guys that when the opportunity comes, he steps up and shows out. And so, it's always nice to see him kind of go back to what he was doing in the bubble. Obviously people are going to label that the bubble, but Jamal Murray's been doing this in the postseason for a couple of years now. Quite some time, and but people only highlight the bubble because of how great he was in the bubble. With those 40-point, 50-point performances. But overall, it's a collective effort, like Big H said. Denver Nuggets don't necessarily need, Jokic to do too much. Jokic is doing his thing. He had triple-double last game, 20, 11, and 12. And then, Michael Porter Jr. putting up 25, and Jamal Murray had 18 and stuff like that. So the Minnesota Timberwolves, they don't necessarily have the firepower to match this Denver Nuggets team. They would have probably had it with Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid, but with Karl-Anthony Towns playing so terrible, he definitely has to be the first guy out of the door come this summer. I feel like if the Timberwolves want to move forward and kind of change the culture over there, because obviously you can't necessarily move Gobert after year one. And the next best guy you can get for a lot of assets and value for is Karl-Anthony Towns, and I feel like they got to do that as soon as possible. But overall, the series hasn't really been entertaining. Denver just been dominating from start to finish, but it has been a sight to see Anthony Edwards, show up and put up these 30 bombs and 40 bombs in the postseason, because we all know he has that F factor. He has that dog in him for sure. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the next series. We have the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Clippers, the 4-5 seeds. The Suns are up 3-1 in this series. Kawhi Leonard has been unable to go in games 3 and 4 due to a right knee injury, and it looks like this series might be a little over. What have you learned so far?
The Clippers have some damn good role players, man. I mean, just been playing phenomenal from where they've been. I mean, Russell Westbrook, I don't think anybody expected this level of performance considering where he was at a couple of months ago with the Lakers. I mean, he was looking terrible with them, unable to shoot, unable to get to the basket, just looked very awkward, no confidence. And now with this team, he has a lot more confidence than he has ever before in his life, maybe just because of Ty Lue, his belief in him, and then just the overall fit, just a more natural fit with him having shooters around him. He's been just a level of motor on this guy's been incredible defensively. We even saw a game one. I mean, to have a 3-19 performance, if people still say, he had a good game, just goes to show how great he was in that performance. I mean, the hustle, the rebounding, the defense, the playmaking, getting to the basket, creating opportunities for guys. He's been downright terrible, downright amazing. And then Norman Powell, he's been showing up. I mean, to go bucket for bucket with Devin Booker is just crazy to me. I do think there's a highlight in this series where the Suns' depth is starting to hurt him a little bit. I feel like, I mean, for KD and Booker having to play 45, 46 minutes against guys that are role players to keep this series alive and edging out with these games. I mean, I don't know if that's a good sign that bodes well for them. And the Nuggets will definitely take advantage of that. I mean, the Nuggets are no joke at all. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight in this series is just, man, it just sucks for if you're a Clippers fan. This is just the life of being a Clippers fan. I mean, how much longer are you gonna just have to have hypotheticals? I mean, Kawhi Leonard injured and Paul George injured. I mean, it just doesn't get worse than that having your two stars injured. I feel like even if they had one of them out there, this series would be closer. They'd even give him a shot at winning this series, give him just a chance. It just hasn't been there. Westbrook has just been phenomenal. But it's just that it is what it is. They don't have the opportunity. These guys are just injured. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, it seemed like he was playing on that knee for the first two games, according to reports, and he was still getting buckets out there. Just the level of skill that he has, and it sucks that be robbed of just an all-time career in terms of just his accomplishments in the regular season, just because he couldn't stay healthy. So it is what it is. But the Clippers, they're fighting hard in this series. And, you just got to give them credit, tip their hats off to them because they've been battling hard. So
Yeah, man, it sucks that Kawhi, still dealing with his knee injury, and this knee is bad, man. He's been going through it for a while. I feel like ever since the Spurs days, ever since he got to Toronto, that knee's been bothering him and keeps on flaring up again and again and again. And I feel like this guy was just getting back into good basketball. These last couple 20 to 30 games, he was hooping. Even coming into those first two games, he was playing fantastic. And then bam, we get hit with the knee injury, him missing 2 games, and it's tough, because they had a chance in the series after that first game. Even the second game that was, pretty close. Felt like they had opportunities to win that game as well. But man, Westbrook, man, even after that first game, 3 for 19, but what he did in that fourth quarter defensively, giving the team second chances and everything, this guy's been playing phenomenal every game of the series. Even without Kawhi on the court, this guy's been dropping 30 balls. He's been keeping the engine going. He's been keeping the games close. He's been playing fantastic on the defensive side of the ball. There's been a lot of people to give up on him this year, talking about, oh, he can't do this on the Lakers. He's unuseful, blah blah blah, and all this type of stuff. But what he's doing for the Clippers right now, losing with their two star players, PG and Kawhi, fantastic. It's tough that even if one of these guys are on the court, it could be a different outcome. But we're looking at the Phoenix Suns. Their two star players, Devin Booker and KD. They're playing 45 minutes.
Ridiculous. They've been
crazy.
hooping though. I can't lie, man.
They're hooping, but it's like it's 45 minutes a game, and it's been every game has been close. Every game has been close. So I don't know, man. Are these guys gonna gas out when they get to the next round when they're in Mile High City? When they touch down in Denver with a full healthy roster against Denver, it's gonna be tough. If they keep up, playing Chris Paul 40 minutes, 40 minutes against Jokic, it's gonna be a lot of problems, man. But then speaking about this Clippers bench, bro, Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, guys like Bones Highland, they're showing up. They're playing out their hearts, and they're giving a big fight compared to these guys right now. So the Suns, man, Booker, especially Booker, back to back to back games. Every game he showed up. And he's one of the best shooting guards in the league, whether or not we like it or not. But what he does on the offensive side of the ball is pretty crazy. Sometimes you see KD just chilling in the corner and just Booker just take over the game, get to his spots, get to his shots, and he's playing so relaxed. It's good. So I can't wait for them to see the Nuggets next year. But it's bad for the Clippers, man. This happens every year. They get so close and bam, one of their star players is hurt. Both the star players are out, and it's the same reoccurring thing every single year since these guys been in the tandem that joined together the year before the pandemic hit, before 2020, and we haven't seen much of them yet. So I don't know if it's about to be the end of them too. Maybe they do move on from Kawhi and PG. Maybe they move on from PG, but we'll see what happens. But I can't wait for that Suns Nuggets series, man. KD book 45 minutes, Chris Paul 40 minutes. It's gonna be tough. It is gonna be tough.
Chris Paul's the one that I think people need to highlight a little bit more because KD, he's been out for a part of the season, so his health. So for the most part, KD's conditioning should be fine. And Devin Booker, he's a young player, so he can live with it. But Chris Paul's the one that people need to watch out for because Chris Paul's an older player, so him playing that sheer amount of minutes, I think it might end up becoming problematic for them because you're gonna have to go through 4 rounds. So you go through this round, the next round, and then the finals. Like that's a lot to go through. So that's 4 rounds of playoff basketball, playing 40+ minutes for Chris Paul. So
it's gonna be and especially with him, it's no slouch. We already know what type of player he is, especially later on in his years. For me, I feel like he's a cone on the defensive side of the ball. He doesn't hit his jump shots like he used to. So to see when the fatigue kicks in, we're gonna see what happens with him. But I think the Nuggets they're gonna cause a lot of problems against them.
Well, the one thing I learned from this series is the Suns aren't the team people thought they were. The people painted them out to be. March 23rd, I'm looking at our Instagram page right now. I posed this question: should teams in the West fear the Phoenix Suns? And I was one of the few people that said no. I simply saw from this perspective the fact that the Phoenix Suns have a crazy scoring punch. Yes, they have Kevin Durant and they have Devin Booker, and these guys have been playing phenomenal these first 4 games. Devin Booker's been hooping, showing the world why he's arguably one of the best shooting guards in the league. And then Kevin Durant, he's contributing, in his way at a very efficient rate. He's not necessarily taking a lot of shots just because I'm Kevin Durant. But the one thing I highlighted was the fact that these guys have zero depth. These guys literally have nobody they can bring off the bench in order to aid guys like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. You need to have some sort of bench depth to give your guys a little bit of rest in the postseason. And right now, Monty Williams has nobody he can go to. He's trying to go to Landry Shamet. He's trying to go, to Wayne Wright and all these other guys, Okogie and maybe TJ Warren and Terrence Ross and stuff like that. But Monty Williams literally has nobody he can trust on that bench, which is why he's forced into playing guys like, Kevin Durant, Ayton, CP, Book, 40+ minutes in round 1 of the playoffs. That's just crazy. These guys are playing 40 to 45 minutes in round 1 of the playoffs. It's ridiculous. But this is a problem I knew would happen. Especially, I knew Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, they'd be able to, do their thing with this amount of minutes. But you guys hit it right on the head. Chris Paul is the guy that everybody should be worried about. This guy, he's getting old. He's up there in age. He doesn't necessarily have the body anymore to be playing this many minutes. But Monty Williams has to do this. And I know they're down Cameron Payne right now, but I feel like even when he comes back, it's not going to change anything. But to get back to this series. And to get to the Clippers, the one thing I highlighted at the start of the series that would give the Clippers a chance was the bench, and that's the only edge that they had on this team. And games 1 and 2, it showed. Their bench came to play, and they were able to escape Phoenix 1-1. But obviously that news to Kawhi, from Kawhi coming out for Game 3 and Game 4 and being out. Just felt like a 7-2-5 to the chest. Obviously, it's like you want the best player to be out there performing at a high level in the postseason, but he just has been unable to, stay healthy, which sucks. It's terrible to see, but it was good to see Russell Westbrook, come alive in these last couple of games with these 30-point performances. I do want to apologize and say I was completely wrong. I'm going to blame the Lakers' toxic franchise and their fan base with, for Russell Westbrook and how they treated him, because Russell Westbrook, he's turned back the clock. Obviously, we said his great days were behind him, but he's starting to show the world why that he's one of these top guys, one of these top elite point guards in the league. And obviously, he has to kind of do it all on his own right now. He's getting contributions from Norman Powell and all these guys that are coming off the bench. But when you're going up against a scoring punch like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I feel like you just need a little bit more than just Russell Westbrook. And it was working. It was just him and Kawhi, and these guys were just going to war, and the bench was contributing at a high level, and they were able to escape Phoenix, like I said. So I feel like, this series could go a completely different way if Kawhi was just healthy. If he was healthy for Game 3, if he was healthy for Game 4, I feel like it's a different outcome. And I feel like it's a series is over if Paul George is playing and Kawhi. If those two guys are playing, I don't think the Suns have a chance in this series whatsoever. If Paul George and Kawhi do their thing, Russell Westbrook's chipping in the way he has been chipping in, and the bench, I feel like it's over for the Phoenix Suns, because obviously the bench is already giving them the edge in this series, and the scoring punch from Kawhi and Paul George. I wouldn't necessarily say they can match Devin Booker and KD, but they can be pretty damn close. But overall, I think this series is pretty much over due to Kawhi's health, and it just sucks. But at the end of the day, man, if I'm an elite team in the Western Conference, like I highlighted, like Golden State, the Lakers, the Denver Nuggets, I'm looking at the Phoenix Suns, man. I'm like, okay, they have these two great guys, and we respect them. Obviously they're superstars, but at the end of the day, man, it's team basketball that needs to be played, and I feel like every other championship contending team that's left in the postseason on the Western Conference, they have a lot of guys that they can throw on guys like Devin Booker and KD, and obviously they have superstars as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next series plays out. But I think this series is pretty much over between the Clippers and the Phoenix Suns. If I'm the Clippers, I'm not too sure what I do with Kawhi and PG, because obviously this is a reoccurring theme with these two guys not being able to stay healthy in the postseason. It's one or the other. Right now, it's both. And so if I'm Steve Ballmer, I think I got to look myself in the mirror and tell myself, is this the franchise that I want to lead for the next 3 to 5 years? Because I'm sure they gave Kawhi an extension. I'm sure they gave PG an extension. And so, those guys are going to get paid, but are they going to be able to play for you in the postseason? You can't necessarily answer that question. It's just up in the air. That's what the status is. So overall, it's been a pretty entertaining series. Overall, I think it's been great, but I think the Suns are probably going to come out of Phoenix with the win, and then they'll move on to the next round, and then to match up with the Denver Nuggets. Let's go ahead and move on to the next series. These next two series are going to be probably the most we're going to be talking about in the Western Conference. We have the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors. The Sacramento Kings are up 2-1 in this series. They were able to protect home court in games 1 and 2, and the Warriors were able to protect home court in game 3. We had a Draymond ejection in game 2. We had a suspension for game 3 from Draymond Green due to his actions to Sabonis kicking him in the chest after his ankle being held. But what have we learned so far from this series?
That the Kings are no joke at all. That's definitely one thing. I mean, I think now the Kings are at least displaying to people like there's no way any of you guys thought that we would be a sweet first round, or that we'd be a team that anybody should be desiring to play in the first round at all. I mean, these guys, just the pace and scoring that they've been playing at, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I know their 3-point shooting has regressed mightily. Keegan Murray, he's really struggled in this series to find his footing. Kevin Huerter, he's been up and down. Just overall, the shooting from this team hasn't been there from the 3-point line, but that still doesn't matter because De'Aaron Fox has just been phenomenal when it comes to the fourth quarters in these games. For this guy to have a huge debut game like that in game 1 and then game 2 close it out just like that, it just shows to me the level of confidence that this team has and the level of confidence that Mike Brown has instilled in this team. I feel like they're absolutely fearless. They don't care about who's in front of them. They don't care that they're playing the reigning champions. They know that they're here to take care of business. And, I've loved the physicality in this series. I just love the fact that, as the series is kind of going on, these two teams are starting to have like a strong dislike to each other. You can definitely get that feeling in the air. I mean, Sabonis and Draymond and Kevon Looney, Kevon Looney said it, this is trenches work. They've been going at it in the series. And Kevon Looney, I feel like, last game he really asserted himself offensively on the glass. I mean, I think he had 9 offensive rebounds, which is just downright ridiculous. I feel like he made it a point that, if Sabonis is gonna play strong, guess what? I'm gonna play just as strong as him, if not stronger. And he did a great job at that. And they're starting to figure it out. I feel like in the last game. Part of that maybe because Draymond Green wasn't in that game. I feel like with Draymond Green on the floor, maybe their defense does take a hit, but offensively it opens up a lot more just because there's a lot more threats of scoring in that type of game. There's a lot more threats to be able to go to the basket and attack the rim. Draymond's not doing what he used to do in 2017, 2016, where he'd actually look at the basket and attack it, be a threat. And I believe, according to his next game, Draymond Green might not start. I think he might be coming off the bench, which, I understand where Steve Curry is coming from. Why would you mess up something that worked out in the last game? I feel like last game, Steph Curry did a great job in pick and roll. He really understood that, I have to take this series into my hands. He has been playing great, but, none of this off-ball stuff is going to end up winning this series if the Kings are scoring like this. We have to score back at them. We have to attack Sabonis in space. We have to get them in pick and rolls. They did a great job of everybody chipping in the last game. Andrew Wiggins, and I feel like Gary Payton Jr. when he comes, I think he might be back in this game, right? Gary Payton,
Yeah, he'll be back.
he might be back. Yes, so that's definitely a guy that they need just to be able to guard De'Aaron Fox. And Sabonis this series, I like what he's done on the glass, but defensively, the Warriors are going to hunt him. He's a guy that, to me, if he even displays some level of defensive ability, that swings it in the Kings' favor. Because De'Aaron Fox, I know he's going to show up. Malik Monkey struggled last game, but he's going to be a contributor off the bench. But these shooters for Sacramento, they have to show up. They have to show up to give him a chance. Kevin Huerter, Keegan Murray, Davion Mitchell, they were giving Davion Mitchell the 3. They were telling him to shoot it. And these guys, they have to show up to give him a chance. So that's so far what I've seen from this series.
Yeah, for me, the Kings coming in the first 2 games, man, they played with that physicality. They weren't scared. They came to punch the Warriors in the mouth, and that's what the series looked like. Even in Game 3, they wanted to do that, but Kevon Looney coming in the game, 20 rebounds, playing physical, and only having one personal foul, he played fantastic for the Warriors. He picked up that role. To me, surprisingly, 20 rebounds and 9 assists. So him doing that, it was a big contribution. Like Abby said, Seth, moving off all these off-ball screens, running around, not, getting to the basket, kind of switched Game 3. He got hot at the 3-point line, 6 for 12 at the 3-point line. He was attacking the basket. They weren't scared to attack the rim. They were getting fouls at the rim, and that's what the Warriors got to do. The Kings are probably I'm pretty sure they're the worst at defending the rim. They give up a lot of points inside the paint, and that's what the Warriors came back to in Game 3. They made it sure that it was going to be a physical game. They made sure to take the shooters out like Kevin Huerter. Trey Lyles went 0 for 4. Davion Mitchell went 1 for 5. Keegan Murray went 0 for 4. So they've been playing good on the defensive side of the ball by taking out the shooters. But every single game has been close, and the Kings have won 2 of them, even with their shooters being tremendously horrible and not hitting their shots. So for the Kings, for me, man, Fox, Sabonis, Malik Monk, those 3 has been, playing fantastic. Although Malik Monk, that last game, 1 for 9. He hasn't shot the ball well that game. He was, they had him in clamps, but the Warriors came in last game with an objective. They did not want to go down 3-0, not want to go down 3-0 at Chase Center, and they not want to play back from that. So they gave an opportunity. They came in, they punched the Kings in the mouth first, and they took it, missing Gary Payne, missing Draymond Green. They look fantastic without the 2, but hey, if they can come back Game 4, do the same thing with those 2 coming back, it might be a different outcome in the series. But for the Kings, Sabonis got to be more effective on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously 15 points, 17 points, 19 points it's not going to cut it when you're the second best player on the team. We need to see 23, 24, 25 to help Fox. The shooters got to start hitting. And it might be a good series for them, but the Warriors as well, the objective, get Curry involved early in the game. Klay Thompson got to be more involved. Jordan Poole has been struggling this series, although he's been dealing with an ankle injury. He's got to be more involved. Wiggins has played fantastic, but to me, Kevon Looney last game, he played great. I felt like he was one of the best players, bar Curry on the court for the Warriors. 20 points, 9 assists coming from the center. undersized center. It was pretty fantastic for them. So, Steve Kerr, he made some adjustments that game 3 we talked about. He had a couple guys off the bench, Kaminga, DiVincenzo, Moody. He was playing a couple good role players. They're coming off the bench, getting some time, especially Kaminga and Moody. We barely get to see those guys. So for them to come in, play 15 to 20 minutes that game is pretty good. So he made adjustments, but game 4, we'll see what happens, man. Draymond coming off the bench, they're going with the same starting lineup. Who knows what's gonna happen?
I mean, the one thing I've learned from this series is that, I don't think the Kings are that dangerous of a team. I feel like, after watching this series, first 3 games so far, and how it's gone, I think people can confidently say, if the Warriors knock down a couple more shots, it could be 2-1 in their favor. I wouldn't go as far as to say 3-0. Give Kings the one in their home on their home floor, but we go to game 1, right? Crazy environment in Sacramento, first playoff game in like 16 to 18 years. And De'Aaron Fox is just playing lights out, and then Malik Monk's doing his thing. But the Warriors were able to lose that game by 3 points. It wasn't the craziest type of loss. They were right there in the end. If Wiggins hits that corner shot, which he normally hits, he's not that bad of a 3-point shooter. So if he hits that shot, it's a different outcome. Steph knocks down that shot, that very last shot, it's a different outcome. And then we go to game 2. They lost by 8 points. So, they're not getting blown out by double digits. And I feel like, a lot went down in that game too. Of course, that's Draymond Green getting his ankle held when they're down by 4 in the fourth quarter, going on a fast break to cut the lead down to maybe 2 or 3, 1. But he gets ejected, right? And that's one thing. And then obviously they're dealing with foul trouble that entire game. So it was kind of tough to keep Loon on the floor. But they were able to, contain guys that went off in game 1. Malik Monk gave you a 30 ball. Trey Lyles gave you 17. I don't think Trey Lyles has scored these last couple of games. So, and then, it is what it is, right? You leave a game 2, you get ejected, right? That's one thing. You get a loss. That's fine, right? The game's already gone. You're already thinking about the next game. But next thing you know, the league slaps the Warriors with a suspension for Draymond Green for 1 game. And it's like, okay, like it's just like, for what? Like, for him taunting the crowd after that, that are flipping him off and stuff like that. Like, he's just interacting with the crowd. That's who Draymond is. But obviously his reputation got him suspended. And so the Warriors had to really make adjustments in this game for game 3. And they're able to blow these guys out of the water. If you watch this game from start to finish, there was never a point in time where you were like, okay, the Kings are making a run. The Kings are starting to come back. They're creeping up, and the Warriors have to really tighten up. The Warriors always had a double-digit lead on these guys from start to finish, and they just controlled the game from, like I said, from start to finish. They never looked back from the tip off. And this is without their main guys, Draymond Green and Gary Payne II, the guys that they need for this type of series. Guys that can contain the paint and guard guys on the perimeter. And so I think, the Warriors, they're in good shape right now. After everything that went down with the whole Draymond Green drama, with him getting suspended, I think, fun times lie ahead. I think coming out of game 4, if the Warriors are able to take care of business on their home floor, I think I believe I have no doubt in my mind these guys can just go ahead and win 2 straight games after that. And then close the series out in 6. I feel like, obviously I was wrong by saying this series is going to go 5 games. But obviously, if a couple games go differently in Sacramento, and then I think the series does end in 5. But I think the Sacramento Kings are putting up a little bit of a fight. But the one thing that they need is their shooters to step up. And I feel like the Warriors have done a hell of a job at, letting De'Aaron Fox do his thing, because it's going to be hard to try to stop that guy in high pick and roll situations between him and Sabonis, because you don't necessarily have the guys that can contain him, because he's just too fast. So he's going to get his buckets. We got to make sure that he's not. They got to make sure that he's not knocking down his shots, because obviously he's a deadly 3-point. He's not a deadly 3-point shooter, but if he's going from the 3-point line, it opens up his game so much. And so if he just contain Fox, Sabonis, I'm not necessarily too concerned about. I just feel like Looney does a hell of a job on him being physical. Then obviously I think Draymond Green coming back for game 4 is just going to be added physicality for the Warriors. I feel like they're going to do a much more better job at containing Sabonis. I feel like, Draymond Green might just try to get up under this guy's skin and try to get in his head for these next couple of games, especially for him being suspended. So overall, I think Steph Curry's been phenomenal this series, but this is something that I expected from Steph. Steph's one of the best players in the league, reigning champion. I feel like this is something that we expect from him every postseason, for him to step up and give his team a chance. Klay Thompson's been all right. Wiggins has been phenomenal. I feel like for him to come back the way he has after being away from the game for about a month and some change. It's been amazing to see, man. He hasn't lost a step on the defensive end. Offensively in game one, he was really attacking, and then now in game three, his shot was really falling. So Wiggins is kind of putting it all together. Jordan Poole, if he gets a little more healthy, going into maybe potentially the next round and later on in this series, he'll probably produce a little bit more. But he's injured right now with the bummed ankle, so I'm not necessarily mad at him his production, but overall, in order to beat this Kings team, it's going to be a collective effort. And at the end of the day, it starts off with Steph Curry leading the way. And I feel like that, in game four, it's just going to be very, very similar to game three. But overall, this has been a very, very entertaining series. Kings being up 2-1. I think that suspension really poked that suspension from the league for Draymond Green really poked the Warriors. It poked the bear. You don't want to do that with the reigning champs. I feel like, they already had some sort of, anger coming into game three, for them being down 2-0 and leaving Sacramento without a win. But you throw in the added suspension and all that stuff, all the drama surrounding this game, and the Warriors are able to come out with a blowout win pretty much. I feel like, it just sways the momentum in their favor. And, being a game four out there in front of their home crowd, if they're able to handle business, I feel like the Warriors are just going to start taking off real soon. So overall, it's been pretty entertaining. It is what it is with the Draymond stomp. They gave him the suspension for his reputation. He said that he got that suspension for what he did 7 years ago in the NBA Finals. But it's going to be interesting to see the rest of the series in Game 4 is today. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the last series of the Western Conference, and we have the Los Angeles Lakers and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Lakers are up 2-1 in this series. John Morant was unable to go in game 2, but the Memphis Grizzlies were able to win that one. But the Lakers were able to still win in Memphis, and then the Lakers were able to contain the Memphis Grizzlies late run in the fourth quarter of game 3 last night. So what have we learned so far from this series?
I think definitely one of the things that was highlighted for the Los Angeles Lakers was their sheer size and physicality. You can definitely see it being an absence with the Grizzlies lacking Steven Adams and Brandon Clarkson. It's really showed up in this type of series. I feel like if they were playing any other team, they would have definitely been able to compete in terms of just size and physicality. But the Lakers, just Anthony Davis, I feel like defensively he's been absolutely phenomenal on that end of the floor. Defensively, he's been absolutely lights. I think he's averaging 5 blocks per game in this series. On that end of the floor, I think he's really done a great job of just keeping guys out the paint, deterring them from getting to the rim. And then one guy that really needs to be highlighted for the Lakers is Rui Hachimura's play. I feel like he's been able to hit big shots. He's been able to get to his spots, get to his mid-range, get to his 3-point shot. Initially when he came to Los Angeles, and even in general when he was drafted, his shot was kind of flat. So credit to Phil Handy for working on him with his jump shot. They're getting contributions from guys like that. D'Lo, I'm still not a big fan of him at all. Still has not shot above 50% ever in a playoff game since he's been into the playoffs, which is a crazy stat. But they're still getting contributions from different guys across the floor. And for Memphis, one guy that I'm really disappointed in is Desmond Bane. His shooting has just not been there in this series. I came into the series highlighting that he was going to be their X factor in terms of his scoring ability and getting to the paint. He's kind of a speedy kind of guy. And his shooting has just been just awful. I feel like the Lakers have done a great job in terms of movement shooters. They've been able to get to his contest. They've been able to stop him from getting to the paint with Anthony Davis. Guys are closing out hard. And then in game 2 is really just a matter of I feel like the Lakers didn't make enough adjustments in that game, especially in the fourth quarter. Xavier Tillman did a great job of asserting himself. Anthony Davis was really struggling from the field. And LeBron James, it's hilarious because you seem like LeBron is not doing much, and you look up and he has 25 on 50% shooting. Just a casual game for him. But I feel like the shooters for Memphis are really letting them down. Desmond Bane and then Dylan Brooks, his antics, they are hilarious, but you got to hit an open shot. If the Lakers are giving you those open shots, and I think Taylor Jenkins is going to be put in a position where he might have to sacrifice that defensive ability of Dylan Brooks for Luke Kennard. They might have to get some shooting on the floor initially just to give him a chance. Last night I feel like a lot of people are just going to do some casual analysis and blame. Look, Ja came back and they started losing. And in reality, if you just looked at the first quarter, guys were missing open shots. Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks were just terrible in that first quarter. And once you start off like that, it's hard to catch up. And John Morant did an excellent job in that fourth quarter trying to will his team back, but it just wasn't enough. The Lakers did a good job of closing out that game. And so far in the series, it's looking like it's in the Lakers' odds. Taylor Jenkins has to do something with Dylan Brooks. Desmond Bain has to show up for them to even have a chance, because John Moran is not going to be able to do this on his own. Jaren Jackson Jr., I do think is phenomenal, but he has to show up on a consistent basis. Defensively, I know he's going to be there all the time, but offensively, he needs to assert himself a little bit more, have that same level of passion and aggression that he did in that game one. But this series, Memphis, they are a tough team. They are hard to close out at home, so we'll definitely see how the next game looks. But right now, the Lakers have control of the series.
Yeah, first game, man, Jared Jackson came in and he was hooping. Now, I put some respect on it. They lost Ja late in the game, and he had 33. He was balling out, but other guys like Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bain, those type of guys, man, they got to show up. Especially Desmond Bain after that game one, saying, "Yeah, man, we let Rui shoot. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna keep on letting him shoot in game two, see if he shows up." And those first three games, man, I felt like Rui's been one of our top three, top two best players on the court. Whenever he's on the court, he's been playing phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball, and he's been playing phenomenal on the offensive side of the ball. So for Desmond Bain to come out after that game one and say, "Yeah, we're gonna, let Rui try to beat us," it's been happening. And T-Rex has been not shooting whatsoever. You see him 6 for 21, 6 for 17, 5 for 18, and his shooting splits has been horrible. On the defensive side of the ball, he's getting cooked too. So on both ends of the ball, having him come out, act like he's been a playoff riser, and to say, "Hey, but we're gonna let this guy beat us," it didn't sit well. It did not sit well with me at all whatsoever. If Ja comes out and says that, that's a superstar in him. That's different. But guys like Dylan Brooks and Desmond Bain talking crap like that, it don't sit well with me. And then game two, we go to, these guys, they play phenomenal. I feel like they made some adjustments, even without Ja, they came out to punch us in his face. They play some fantastic defense. Jaren Jackson, he's been playing that safety role for them a lot, and it kind of bit us in the ass in that fourth quarter where we had Vandy and LeBron was trying to bring us back. Every time Vanderbilt cut, who's sitting right there in the paint? Jaren Jackson. And we know Vanderbilt's not an offensive guy of the ball, so he panics, throws the ball out, turnover, or LeBron's trying to go up, and he got two people in his face, and Jaren Jackson's right there. And it's tough. It's tough, and we're getting a game from Anthony Davis like 2 for 14. And that, for me, that's what it's been a lot. The inconsistency. One day he wants to play physical and wants to be aggressive. Then the next day he's a bystander. He sits out, he stands in the 3-point line, he doesn't attack the basket. It kind of doesn't sit well with me, Anthony Davis. I need him in the paint. I need him, banging with everybody in that block. We have the size advantage. So for him to take advantage like that, he has to. And that second game was not good. But third game, we came out and we put on a defensive performance in the first half for ages, man. They only scored 9 points in the first half, but I just said, guys missing wide open shots. It can't have that happen. Memphis, especially with guys like Desmond Bain getting open shots, Dylan Brooks getting open shots, Tyus Jones going 0 for 6 from 3. Like, they have a lot of open shots and they're missing it. But hey, it's perfect for me, and we took control of that game. Anthony Davis had a fantastic game. This is the type of game that I expect him to have a lot. 31 and 16, played great on the defensive side of the ball. Guys like Rui, guys like Austin Reeves contributed. And 40-year-old LeBron James, he does what he does. Age is like wine, and he cooked up. So, for me, the series it's going well, bar the second game. The adjustments we made going into that third game were pretty good. And like I'd be said too, casuals, they're gonna want to blame Ja. Oh, Memphis plays better with Ja. Memphis plays better with Ja. But they're not talking about Desmond Bain and Dylan Brooks not hitting their shots, shooting 30% from the field, playing okay defense, but not too well of a defense. But those are the guys that have been helping Ja this whole year. When he's not been playing, they've been stepping up. So for them not to step up in the playoffs, can't blame Ja on that. Ja, that fourth quarter, he had like 28, came in 22 straight points, ended the game with 45. He tried to fight back. He was the only one showing fight on the team. Nobody else was really, hooping. It looked like nobody else was trying, but to me, it was too late in the game for that to happen. But Memphis, I feel like the series is already over. I know the Lakers are going to still finish that fourth game. We're going to win it at home. And we're going to take that last game at Memphis, ended at 5, give us some rest. But I like where the series is going. Memphis, Jaren Jackson got to play more consistent. Desmond Bain got to show up. Dylan Brooks got to show up. That guy been shooting bricks every single game that he's been playing, bar that second game where he hit that late 3 in the end of the game to close it. But other than that, he's been shooting like shit. So we'll see what happens at game 4. But let's go, Lake Show.
Yeah, I think pretty much I got to give credit to the Lakers in this series. I mean, I picked them to win. And for every reason that I've said, they've shown it to me in games 1 through 3. I feel like in game 1, I like the matchups that they threw at the Memphis Grizzlies. I like that matchup from LeBron guarding think it was Jaren Jackson. They put AD on Tillman just to help out on the jaw drives. And although AD did get, he didn't have like the greatest game offensively, his defense has been amazing this entire series with all these blocks and stuff. And so they were able to contain Ja. And LeBron James, Jaren Jackson had himself a hell of a game, but obviously he has the size on LeBron, so it's not like LeBron kind of has a chance. He has a puncher's chance, but it is what it is, right? And then I think it's just kind of crazy. Nobody would have believed you if you said Austin Reeves was going to close out a playoff game with LeBron James and AD on the floor. But that's what happened. Obviously Rui's heroics in that second half of that game, and then Austin Reeves was really closing out the deal. Just gave the Lakers enough to steal a game in Memphis, and that's all you need. You just kind of need one game where your role players just kind of play out of their minds on the road and just kind of just still in a very important game. And so going into game 2, when Ja got announced out, I kind of had a feeling that the Memphis Grizzlies were going to play a little bit better, and they were going to be able to come out of this game with the win, because it's kind of hard to game plan for a team without their best player, because now they could throw a billion different looks at you. And the Memphis Grizzlies, they're a team that knows how to win without Ja. They've done it a lot. They've done it all of last year, for majority of last year. I'm sorry, and they won a playoff game last year against the Warriors by blowing them out by like 30 points without him. So they need Ja to win series, but I wouldn't necessarily say they need Ja to win like a couple games. They could win a game without him. They could survive without him. But in order to win a series, you are going to need your best player, Ja, to be out there on the floor. And then game 3 from start to finish, the Lakers made it a point to play elite defense and then kind of just get out there on the break and just, first playoff game back with a full crowd. They did not want to disappoint, and that's exactly what they showed out there on display. With the crazy crowd, these guys going crazy in the fourth quarter. I think the Memphis Grizzlies only had 9 points in that first, so phenomenal defense. And then Big H, you spoke about it, and after you said it too. Desmond Bain. I've said it. You guys are always trying to push that he's better than Klay Thompson on me, and I just not a believer. I'm not a truther of Desmond Bain, and Desmond Bain is just gonna have to show me that he's better than a guy like Klay Thompson. And for him to be playing this bad in this series, that he's in a series that he's needed in, it's just crazy. And for Dillon Brooks, you kind of know what you're gonna get with Dillon Brooks. You're not gonna get the scoring from him. You're gonna get the elite defense and the Pat Bev type of mentality from him each and every night. I mean, he's over here talking to LeBron, saying things like, I wish I played the Miami LeBron. I wish I played the Cleveland LeBron. I'm not going to respect the guy until he puts 40 on me. This is LeBron James we're talking about. I mean, you ended up punching him in the nuts last game, and you ended up getting yourself ejected. You lose that game. And if it wasn't for Ja's heroics in that second half, in that fourth quarter specifically, you're probably losing that game by like 20, 25 points. So Desmond Bain's been downright terrible. Not going to say it's a sight to see, but it is. Obviously, for people to push him over a guy like Klay Thompson, I've always thought that it was a bit ridiculous thing to say. And then obviously, John Morant coming back from that hand injury, he looked great last night. Obviously, it was a rough start, and I feel like if the Memphis Grizzlies started off the game a little bit better, the game probably would have been a little bit closer. Probably still would have given the Lakers the edge, but at the same time, the game could go either way with how great Ja was in that fourth quarter. We do have to highlight that. I don't want to let that go unnoticed or anything like that, but at the end of the day, Lakers have been taking care of business. I did think it was stupid of Desmond Bain to say, Rui has to do this for multiple games after his game 1. And Rui's been pretty much great, probably the third best player for the Lakers. And so, this series is going how I expected it to go. Lakers being up 2-1. I just needed the Lakers to steal one game in Memphis, and they did that early on. And so I wasn't necessarily too concerned with them losing the game 2, in a jawless game. Obviously it's kind of like a head scratcher. And if the Lakers were to lose this series, they're probably going to look back at that game and be like, we kind of missed the opportunity right there. But I just don't think that's the case. I think they take care of business like in game 4, like Big H said. The game will be a little bit closer though. I'll say that. They'll probably lose game 5 in Memphis and then probably just close this thing out at the Crip in 6. So overall, it's an entertaining series. It's good to see the Lake Show back in the playoffs. But with that being said, I think that wraps up our, everything we've learned so far in the NBA playoffs. Our schedule for now will be, we'll probably try to talk about these games after, every 4, 5, 6 games of the series. But with that being said, any final words before we sign off here, little fellas?
Man, I'm excited to see how this first round ends because there's a lot of stuff that's going to be pushed. I'm looking at the Kings and Warriors series particularly. A lot of things are going to be happening, man.
Yeah, he has a lot of agendas ready. But man, I can't wait. Yeah, man. This first round, a couple of these series been excited, so I can't wait for my Lakers to close this one out. But can't wait, man. And big week this week, though, man. We got the NFL draft coming up, so I can't wait for that as well.
We got the NFL draft coming up. By the end of this week, Abdi's probably going to unleash his list of agendas that he's got for us. So it's going to be an interesting week. But of course, we'll be right here to talk about all of it and everything. With that being said, we'll go ahead and close things out here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We really appreciate your love and support. We'd really appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Podcast. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, all of our social media handles will be at the end of this video. And for those of you that are listening to us on Apple and Spotify, if you go to our Instagram page at New Media Podcast, you'll be able to navigate yourself to all of our social media handles there. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now H, now that's overkill.